So you may have been told that it's your ambition as a woman that has been off-putting, that has been unattractive, unpleasant for a man to be around. Okay. Apparently, women who are ambitious, women who are recognized for their skills, maybe they've got the actual track record and results, their competence, their expertise is evident, it is visible, it's demonstrably recognized and rewarded by other people. And suddenly now men are saying that they don't find ambitious women attractive. Here's the thing that we need to understand often as women. There's a couple of things underlying this that we're going to talk about in this video today. First of all, download the Invisible Contract Framework. It is completely free, and you can personally reflect on the invisible contracts that might be governing your life, including what we're going to talk about today, which is really around your fears, maybe, okay, and some of the invisible contracts you're obeying around success and ambition. Before we get into this, I want to say this. Ambition means different things to different people. I think often when we talk about ambition, we assume that it has to be or only is women who want to progress in the corporate sphere in terms of leadership status, seniority, and maybe aligned salary, right? You can be ambitious in life and not be in the corporate space at all. You do not have to be in business to be ambitious, okay? And again, what we find is because of our restricted ways of looking at women, we often confine women who are ambitious to just this particular sphere of life. But what I will say is, there's a couple of things that are really underlying. These are the invisible contracts under the surface when we hear men and sometimes misguided women challenge and question other women's supposed ambition. One of the things that they are challenging often is the fact that although they may have to acknowledge that you as a woman are competent, skilled, and expert at whatever it is you do, okay, and that you can be rewarded for that, whether that is with money, status, recognition, etc. But what a lot of men in particular are grappling with is the fact that you can profit from it entirely by yourself. And I'm going to tell you why I'm saying this in a moment, right? Because historically, women have always been competent and skilled and worked in different spheres, okay? But that competence and that skill benefited other people. Their labor was largely unpaid and it benefited other people. And the difference now is that a woman can actually desire and strive to benefit from her own competence, skill, and expertise entirely. And she does not have to attribute the fruits of that labor to anybody else and not a man. The other thing as well that comes with being a competent woman, an expert, skilled, and having some level of ambition, okay? And this is what I'm saying, like sometimes, you know, you've got women who enjoy knitting, who enjoy gardening. It doesn't matter what it is. You can be ambitious because all that is about striving for something more. But we often confine this conversation about ambitious women to corporate workplaces. Now, or business. Now, my point here is this. What happens is the more competent you become as a woman, that gets recognized and rewarded. Okay? And what comes with that? Authority. So there's two invisible contracts often at play here. One is that as a woman, your labor and skill should always be available for communal use and at least use of the man that you are in a relationship with. And then the next one is the authority that starts to emerge. And that authority starts often within, because a lot of women, you gain more confidence in yourself, more esteem, you're more assured. Because when you know you've got the credibility, the track record, the expertise, then that is reflected back to you by your peers at work or your peers in business, by other people who are aware where your expertise is visible. It comes with a certain level of authority. And certainly as you actually grow your career and you become more senior, of course, seniority, generally speaking, is paired with some kind of authority. That is the bit that men are not used to. Remember, we live in a world where systems of power have stripped women systematically, deliberately of their self-authority, number one, and from having authority in many of these spheres: religion, family, um, politics, the workplace, healthcare, education. You look at the top, FTSE, the FTSE 250, the Fortune 500, it's the same thing all the time. There's an over-representation of men in these senior leadership positions. And so everybody has been conditioned and programmed to believe that women do not deserve authority, that they're incapable of having authority, and they shouldn't have it. And so when you are actually growing in your authority, which often comes about when you become more and more successful, okay, or influential, because that counts as well, there is a visceral resistance that the rest of the world has. And it's not just men, but the most misogynistic men, of course, can't help but comment. Those are the kind of invisible contracts that are really at play when you hear people criticizing and challenging ambitious women. Because on the flip side, ambitious man, right? A man is allowed to strive. A man is allowed to desire an identity that is defined actually by status, by wealth, by recognition, and by reward. And he is not thought to be less of a man. That is actually what men are allowed to do. Whereas women, our utility and desires have been confined often to cooking, cleaning, domestic chores, and being useful to a man sexually and emotionally. Okay, performing physical labor in the family setting only is what women have been allowed to do. Okay, and what I find very ironic is that the same set of skills quite often that women will use in the home, like leadership, organization, time management, just executive function more generally, because let's be honest, if you're a stay-at-home mother, that's what you're doing. Okay, you're not sitting at home usually with your feet up. There are leadership skills involved, for example, and many other skills involved in running a household. And so it's okay when that level of competence is being used in the home. I was listening to a TikTok live, and the man, he relayed a story actually about his friend who wrote a book in 6 weeks. And he was asking his friend, how did you manage to do that? And the friend said to him, actually, it's my wife who's a project manager. And so she project managed this project so that I could write this book in 6 weeks. And so the commentator on the live was saying, see, that's a good example, because that's the thing about ambitious women. If you're using your skill to benefit, he said, the household, but really that benefits the man, then it's okay. So if you have these skills that you have earned, and some of these skills are innate gifts, strengths, and talents that you might actually have, it's only okay when you are competent and using that competency to benefit the man that you're with. It's always in proximity to a man. Always. You can't, and this is one of the reasons why there's this narrative and rhetoric around single women who do not desire to be in relationships, who do not want to be in a relationship and use and be used, essentially, for your strengths, gifts, and talents to be used. This is one of the reasons why I focus so much when I'm talking to you about self-authority and learning to be rooted in it and not needing outside validation and not allowing other people to assess and challenge your right to your self-authority. You know, the amount of times, women and men have said to me, you'd make such a great wife, the strength that you have, your humanity, the qualities that you have as a person, you'd make such a great wife and mother. No, that's not the way I want to use those things, though. Yeah, they're mine. They belong to me. And like I say, what we have a problem with as a society is women profiting off of their own gifts, strengths. This is why they will say things like women are selfish. These women aren't getting married because they are selfish. Women aren't having children like they used to because they are selfish. I had a man, he said, that's the problem with women. When they get their own money, they do it for themselves. You see, a lot of this, though, is there's a lot of historical amnesia. Yeah, because you see, what we do is we assume that when men, before women could have their own money, before women could have their own bank account, before women were being treated as legal entities, adult legal entities, and not the possession and assets of a man, okay, before we were allowed because we need to be very clear here. We weren't doing it before because we couldn't or because we wouldn't. It's because we were not allowed. We were excluded systematically, time and time again, from major systems of power where we would be able to be involved and operate as adults. Okay, so this idea that women are inherently selfish, no. What we're seeing is generations of women, for the first episode in a brand new series, generations of women deciding, actually, I get to benefit and I will choose how I use my resources. That is not inherently selfish, and that is not inherent female selfishness. Because we assume that before we were allowed by these systems to participate, by these systems to actually be paid for the labor that we do, before we were allowed, men were not all giving, all sharing. If you go and do your research, for example, it's well known that when women actually build wealth on whatever level, they give back to community and society. Men don't do that at the same rates at all. You see, this is all a myth that, in times of yesteryear, all the times where women could not have a bank account, when marriage was the only survival strategy for women. I'm going to say that again because in some places in the world, it still is like that now. But what I'm saying to you is, 100 years ago, that was the way you sought out food, sustenance, and shelter as a woman. You're telling me back then, all the men who were at work and had a wife at home were only thinking about doing it for their wife and were spending all that money on their wives, and that their wives were the ones that ultimately and completely benefited from that man's labor? Absolutely not. And this is why we have to listen very carefully. One thing, I'm not letting that slide because there's a lot of amnesia about the historical realities for women. And so now to label women as selfish, because by the way, we always had these competencies. It's just that the world and systems of power only rewarded us when we used them in the home for other people's benefit primarily. And now we're living in a time where a woman can think, you know what, I do have these skills, or I'm going to go and develop these skills. I'm going to acquire these skills, and I will be the one to first and foremost benefit. Why do you think we have so many instances in which men will come across a woman who is successful and accomplished and want to do a few things? One, think, well, she's got those things, so I'll just take it from her. I'll just use her. I can't tell you, when I first bought a property, okay, and I'd have people around, etc., the number of men who would come to my house in group situations, and say, oh, you've got 2 bedrooms. Oh, so your husband can move in. Excuse me? No. I am an adult and I have done the work to live an adult life. No other adult man gets to come and think, oh, actually, she's all set up, so I'll just slide. No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Right? You have to understand, nobody else is entitled to your labor. And it is not selfish for you to enjoy the profits of your own competence and skills. Now, if you choose to share them, you can. That is your choice, but it is not owed. A man is not entitled to that. And you are not selfish when you don't want to use it in that way at all. Okay? And this is my point. All of a man's talents and resources, we don't expect that man to have to use all of them on a woman. And if you've met me before now, you know how I feel about women asking men for money. So I don't even want to see that in the comments. Okay? I don't. Because actually, a woman's competency is not only valid when she is allowing it to be used and allowing it to be available for somebody else to use. If you want to use what you know, who you are, and your skills to support a partner that you believe is a mutual exchange, I'm not commenting on that. What I'm saying is that you do not need external male validation, approval, or agreement of how you choose to use your own resources at all. And actually, this downplaying of women's competencies, like I said, we've always been competent. It's just that we weren't allowed to use those competencies. And now we're in a situation where a lot of the time as well, you can cut out the middleman now. Yeah, the gatekeepers are kind of dying off now. You can come onto social media, for example. And I tell you this, since I've been sharing on social media my ideas and thoughts and frameworks publicly, obviously about what it means to be an unpunishable woman, what it means to relocate self-authority within yourself, a lot of the visceral reactions I know are because I clearly have self-authority. And with time, you do build a different type of authority in terms of the way people see you, the way they perceive you. Maybe they ask you questions, they ask you for advice. And actually, for a lot of men, they don't like that, especially when I talk very clearly about, virginity. Pleasure, authority, this whole thing around submission. Oh, that gets their goat. Right? When I say actually you have intrinsic human value as a woman, you do not need to allow yourself to be assessed by a man. His opinion can never be more relevant and significant than your opinion of yourself. Oh, that gets them upset, because what has happened over time is that we are building this global community. And of course, my voice obviously is heard. And when you meet me in person, I'm no different offline, to be quite frank. In fact, yeah, I'm probably, right? There's a certain authority with which I carry myself. It's not an authority that I hold over other people. It's one over myself. I know who I am. I do not cognitively surrender or submit to a man or anybody else because they disagree with me. And I certainly am not going to cognitively and intellectually submit to a man. On what basis? For what reason? No. Now, when I say this, what happens is that a man will then retort, a misogynistic man, of course, one that is emotionally immature, will retort and say, well, everybody needs to take correction. I don't need to take correction from another adult. I am an adult. Now, will I choose, and have I demonstrated my ability and genuine intention to reflect if I am wrong, to reflect if further information is presented to me? Yes. But I'm not a child. I don't function like a child. I don't think like a child. And I do not expect to be treated like one. And so this assumed role of being able to correct a woman, I reject that. I'm not a child. We are peers. We are peers. That's what we are. We're two human beings, first of all. We all have intrinsic human value. And then sometimes, I should correct myself, sometimes we are peers, because sometimes we're not always peers emotionally and intellectually. That's the truth. And some men struggle with that. It's obvious at times that we're not peers because we are not of the same emotional maturity. And it shows in his thinking and his behavior. But what he's trying to leverage is just assumed male authority so that I back down, back away, second guess, and defer to him intellectually. That is not going to happen. Now you can see why. Outside of my friendships, of course, and my professional relationships, it can be challenging for a man who's emotionally immature. And that, what I just shared with you now, that posture and demeanor that I have where I don't feel guilty about it, I don't have any self-consciousness about it. Because like I said, what I'm not saying and what they hear sometimes, which I know is willful obtuseness, is I'm saying that I am better than them. I am superior than them. No, I didn't say any of that. What I said is that I'm equal to you. What I said is that your opinion of me is not equal to my opinion of myself. It can't be. How can it be? Okay, this is often the attitude, I suppose, that some men have a problem with, not realizing that actually the reason why I am like this, the reason why other women have the ability, the competence to express themselves, communicate, be sure about themselves, be rooted in themselves, and decide actually my labor also belongs to me. I, number one, get to choose how and who to use it with, but number two, I get to benefit from it. And if I'm not benefiting from it primarily, that is a problem. I can't tell you the number of times men have said, yeah, but you do that so well. Why can't you do it for me? Because you're an adult. That's why. You're an adult and there's nothing wrong with you. You have no impediments or impairments. You just simply don't want to do this. And because I'm a woman, you think I should do it for you. And that's not going to happen. It's another reason why I would struggle. I mean, I wouldn't struggle because, as you know, marriage is not something I desire. So therefore, I'm not going to select a man that is childlike. Because one thing that's going to irritate me is that. I remember one man who was a friend asking me to fill out a basic form. I said, You could have Googled that. You could Google it, you could learn how to do it. If you don't know how to fill out a basic form for the council by now, and he did not have any learning difficulties. He just thought, well, I'll wait for you to do it because you're a woman. No, 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 no. I don't take those. To me, that's, you see, some women that sounds like flattery. To me, I know it's not flattery. It certainly isn't flattery. It's not complimentary. It's laziness. It's weaponized incompetence. I will not be engaging in such a thing. Part of this could be that I'm an eldest daughter as well. I've done my years of all of that stuff. I'm not doing it in my adult life at all. Okay, but it's this demeanor and air that you'll find a lot of the time. A man will say, well, actually, you see, that's the problem with ambitious and successful women. You start thinking you're bigger than what? I am who I am. And the same way, and it's so funny, this is something you have to be aware of as a woman. And when I'm teaching on the group training program, this is why I'm always talking about self-authority, is that competence and expertise and even authority, but especially a healthy type of self-authority. Yeah, I'm not talking about wielding, unearned power over other people, but a sense of healthy self-authority is a bit like the sun and the sun's rays. And what's very interesting is that girls and women have been trained and conditioned into allowing men, okay, being able to allow men to shine, to be the center of attention, to be the priority in the family, down to the little ways like being served dinner first, getting the biggest piece of meat, which some women have some obsessions with, right? Of serving a man first, serving him the biggest portion, all of this stuff, which is connected ultimately to maleness, okay? Girls and women have been taught how to stand in the shadow of a man. In fact, we've been taught that that is the right thing to do. That is feminine. That is womanly. That is divine. That you stand behind the man, that you stand in his shadow. Men have never been taught to respect women. That is not a conditioning systematically that happens, to fundamentally see women as human beings who have intrinsic value and who deserve to be dignified and respected. And that women absolutely have the capabilities and the abilities to shine as well. So a lot of men, because they are immature, again, because they are also, they're misogynistic, they are obeying a lot of patriarchal invisible contracts, they cannot fathom that a woman might be very good at something, might be so good at it, in fact, that she gets recognized and rewarded by other people and with money. And also she might not want to share any of that with you, or she may choose to decide how she uses those resources, even if she is with you, because the expectation, the invisible contract, is that women give all, give everything, overgive, self-sacrifice, put themselves last. That is what the invisible contract is. It requires you to do that in order to be judged well as a woman, in order to be chosen, in order to be loved, in order to be accepted. In order for that man to look at you proudly as his wife, you've got to be giving everything you've got. And that giving needs to benefit him directly. And this is why it's so important for you to understand, when you're hearing these things, the invisible contracts underneath that. The problem isn't your ambition. It isn't your success. And is it true? Could it be true? Of course. Human beings are human beings. And so there are some people who are just not pleasant human beings. They're immature. They're unkind. Yeah? They're rude to people. And actually, maybe they do believe that they are superior to other people. But that is not going to be because they're a woman. That's not going to be because they are a woman with money. That's because that's who they are. And like I say, as a system, as a society, girls and women are conditioned into accepting male superiority, accepting men, treating women as if women are inferior. So of course it's all right when men exhibit these traits. Well, no, nothing wrong with that. But when a woman maybe exhibits those traits, why? Because she is a human being, just like that man, it's suddenly connected to the fact that she's successful, ambitious, and has money, when really it's a human trait. The difference is that men have been enabled over time to behave those ways without any recourse and with no consequences. There's a big historical amnesia about the way maleness has been allowed to function and operate in this world, especially when it has negatively impacted women. And so when we see women now, because of access, you can be in the workplace, you can make your own money in various ways. Of course, as a woman, you could have a janky personality. Of course. It's a bit of a no-brainer. But it isn't going to be because of your ambition. And so I would really encourage you as a woman, particularly a young woman, if you want to go and learn something, you want to develop a particular skill, do not allow yourself to be held back because you want to still remain desirable by being, by playing small, staying small, because you're thinking about the way a man is going to perceive you. No, you are a full human being. If you want to go and learn something, go and do that. It's a glorious life. It can be a glorious life when you allow yourself to explore and to experience certain things. It's so important, whether that's traveling, you could have hobbies, for crying out loud, and you become really well informed, well learned. It's not always about academia, and it's not always about the amount of money that's actually in your bank account here. There is a value as human beings of learning and becoming multifaceted. There is an inherent value in that. And it is also okay for you to decide as a woman, I am going to benefit from this myself. Don't worry. Okay? It's okay to do that.